News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow.
Karen, we begin with the latest on trade. New tariffs for practically every U.S. trading partner are now in effect as of midnight East Coast time. President Trump announced on social media that the higher duties target, quote, countries that have taken advantage of the United States for many years, end quote, pushing tariff rates to their highest levels since World War II. Bloomberg's Bill Ferry says the ultimate goal of onshoring manufacturing jobs could have secondary effects.
The U.S. average tariff rate is now just over 15%, and it was below 2.3% last year before President Trump took office. So from 2% to 15%, certainly at some point that is going to really wind its way through the U.S. economy and show up on the shelves of stores.
Bloomberg's Bill Ferry notes trading partners, including the EU, Japan, and South Korea, negotiated a 15% rate. Switzerland was assigned the highest of any developed nation at 39% after failing to reach a deal when its president made an emergency visit to Washington this week. Now we're hearing the Swiss government is holding an emergency meeting today on how to react. And this morning, Swiss politicians are looking to cancel an order of F-35 fighter jets from Lockheed Martin.
And the president, Nathan, assigned a much higher tariff on one key trading partner. That would be India. President Trump said yesterday he plans to double tariffs on Indian goods to 50% as a penalty for buying Russian oil.
As you know, we put a 50% tariff on India on oil. They're the second largest. They're very close to China in terms of the purchase of oil from Russia.
Why are you singling India out for these additional sanctions?
It's only been 8 hours. So let's see what happens over the next.
Sanctions.
You're going to see a lot more.
So this is a taste of.
You're going to see a lot more. You're going to see so much.
President Trump added he may also punish China with additional tariffs over its purchases of crude from Russia. Negotiations with China are still ongoing, although with the U.S.'s other two largest trading partners, along with the U.S.'s two other trading partners, Mexico and Canada.
Speaking of Russia, Karen, President Trump told reporters there was a very good chance he would meet President Vladimir Putin and Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky soon. The Kremlin says an agreement is in place now for the U.S. and Russian presidents to meet in the coming days. The Interfax News Service reports that both countries have agreed on a venue. In the Oval Office, President Trump addressed the meeting this week between Putin and U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in Moscow.
We had some very good talks with President Putin today. And there's a very good chance that we could be ending the end of that road. That road was long and continues to be long, but there's a good chance that there will be a meeting very soon.
How close do you think you are to a deal?
Excuse me?
How close do you think you are to some kind of deal?
Well, I don't want to say. I've been disappointed before.
Well, President Trump informed allies he was positive about the possibility of a ceasefire in Ukraine.
Well, remarks from President Trump also making waves in the tech space, Nathan. He's announcing plans for a new 100% tariff on semiconductor imports in an attempt to bring manufacturing back to the U.S.
We'll be putting a tariff on of approximately 100% on chips and semiconductors. But if you're building in the United States of America, there's no charge.
And President Trump made those comments during his joint announcement with Apple CEO Tim Cook. The tech giant promised to onshore all of iPhone and watch glass production to the U.S.
This is a significant step toward the ultimate goal of ensuring that iPhones sold in the United States of America also are made in America.
The president singled out Apple as an example of how to avoid increased levies, saying Apple's coming back to America. However, CEO Tim Cook did say that final iPhone assembly will be elsewhere for a while.
Well, there was a tech issue, Karen, that grounded United Airlines flights across major U.S. airports. But now the carrier says it has resumed flights after fixing that issue. The airline says, quote, the underlying technology issue has been resolved. While we expect residual delays, our team is working to restore our normal operations, end quote. The United spokesman says the outage was not related to recent cybersecurity incidents in the airline industry.
Well, let's go to the economy now, Nathan. 3 Fed officials are voicing fresh concerns over the U.S. labor market and singling out a potential rate cut in September. They include San Francisco Fed President Mary Daly.
Once the labor market stumbles, it falls. And it falls quickly, and it falls hard. So you don't want to get into that situation. So all this means, as you put it together, that I think we'll likely need to adjust the policy rate sometime in the coming months.
Comments from San Francisco Fed President Mary Daly followed rhetoric from Fed Governor Lisa Cook in Boston, who said downward revisions in jobs report data are typical of turning points in the economy. Minneapolis Fed President Neil Kashkari also told CNBC he's expecting 2 Fed cuts before year-end. And that's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.